The movie opens as we see a middle-aged man named Paul, who is swimming in the sea as Paul does, when he suddenly notices an ominous funnel in the sky. He doesn't notice that bubbles are silently forming a circle around him, but they vanish without a trace. Later, he finishes swimming and returns to the house, which is located near the coast. On May 2nd, Paul, who owns a shipbuilding company, arrives at work. The workers are busy fulfilling a crucial order that will determine whether their business survives or collapses. After checking on his subordinates, he drives home, leaving behind the hustle and bustle of the city for the peace of coastal solitude. His wife Elise and daughter Mia are waiting for him, and they seem to be a happy, idyllic family. Later, Paul notices that the kitchen faucet has stopped running, so he goes down to the basement with his daughter. Their pet cat Tofu wants to follow, but they do not let him enter because there is a fish in the aquarium in the basement that Tofu might attack. While Mia watches the fish, Paul fixes the boiler, which is leaking water. His daughter is then startled by a spider and asks Paul to kill it, but he refuses, saying that spiders are useful because they kill mosquitoes and flies. The two then play a silly game in which Paul takes on the role of a monster and pretends to eat Mia, making her burst into laughter. Upon returning upstairs, Paul starts cooking, and after dinner, the family has a lively dance party in the living room. After Mia goes to bed, Paul and Elise continue dancing together and eventually retreat to the bedroom to make love. On May 5th, Paul wakes up and takes a shower, during which he notices that the shower head has somehow become higher than before. He later puts on his shirt and realizes that it has become a bit too big, so he picks out another one. At work, he finds out that the payment for the order has been delayed yet again, and this greatly upsets him. In the evening, despite her father's bad mood, Mia manages to persuade him to tell her a bedtime story, and he even gives her a ride on his back. On May 7th, Paul notices that all his clothes have become too big for him, and that he has lost a significant amount of weight, which freaks him out. He decides to visit a doctor, where he's horrified to learn that his height is now 176 centimeters, while he claims he has been 180 ever since he was 18. The doctor attributes the shrinkage to age and stress, insisting it is nothing to worry about. But Paul objects because 4 centimeters is too much.
Just ask my wife!
Later at work, Paul notices that his helmet has also become too big. He grows so anxious about these changes that he cannot sleep at night, and so he decides to spend his time productively and begins working out. On May 20th, Paul takes a shower when he notices that the shower head now seems much taller than him, and furthermore, his wedding ring slips off his thinning finger. Later, he meets his wife, and both are stunned to realize that Paul has become significantly shorter than she is. The couple freaks out and rushes to the hospital, where the doctor performs all kinds of tests but cannot figure out what is wrong with him. By all accounts, the man is healthy, and the doctors only record a proportional decrease in his body measurements. Tired of the pointless tests, Paul leaves the hospital without permission and returns home. In the following days, Paul continues to shrink, and he even starts joking that it is time for him to go to the circus because Paul has become the size of Tofu. Elise worries that the cat might attack him and decides to let it outside. On June 30th, Paul, who has shrunk to the height of about 40 centimeters, is left home alone when he sees Tofu watching him curiously through the window glass. Suddenly, Paul notices someone opening the door, so he quickly begins running away to hide and gets under a bed. There, he learns that the man is a realtor who is showing the house to guests. The realtor explains how the owner is selling the house, supposedly because her husband has disappeared and there are too many memories here.
I didn't disappear, I just shrank!
Sometime later, when Elise returns home, Paul scolds her, saying that she did not warn him about the visitors and decided to sell the house without even telling him. Elise explains that she has no choice since he refuses to see the doctors and the family has no way to pay the mortgage because he's the one earning the money. Paul replies that he doesn't want to be a lab rat and does not consider himself sick, so his frustrated wife struggles to make him understand the gravity of the situation.
Oh, gravity? That's hilarious!
On July 5th, Mia places her shrunken father in a dollhouse where he can live in relative safety and comfort. While looking around his new place, Paul tries to joke around with his daughter and dances with the doll to entertain her. But when Mia wants to play monster and growls at her father, her scream hurts his tiny eardrums, so Mia quickly feels bad and apologizes. At night, Paul climbs into bed with his wife after climbing up her hand, which now feels enormous to him. July 10th, Paul makes himself a mini rope with a hook from fishing tackle, since getting around the house has become become increasingly difficult for him. At that moment, Tofu suddenly sneaks into the house through a small door, which makes Paul scared of him. While trying to avoid the animal, Paul accidentally trips over a hook and injures himself. He takes off his bloody shirt, after which he arms himself with a sewing needle and runs toward the dollhouse. Regardless, Tofu continues chasing him, so Paul has to save himself by rolling through a crack in the basement door. The cat then raises its paw to attack its prey, which causes Paul to fall off the stairs and land in a trash bin in the basement. Sometime later, Elise returns home and sees her husband's bloody shirt on the floor, so she starts looking for him. She searches the basement where Paul desperately calls out for her, but she does not hear him. Tofu also arrives at this moment, so Paul tries to attract the cat's attention to alert his wife. However, Elise assumes that the cat must have killed and eaten her husband, so she feels devastated and heads upstairs, while poor Paul is left alone. After spending the whole day in the trash bin, Paul makes himself new clothes and climbs out to inspect the basement. He makes his way out of the box and into the vastness of the basement, where he finds the needle that fell with him. Paul arms himself and soon hears the sound of a spider, so he hurries to the leaking boiler to quench his thirst and wash up a bit. The next morning, Paul hears a noise upstairs, so he runs to the stairs, but fails to attract his family's attention. He hears Mia saying she wants to go down to the basement to find her father, but her mother does not let her. The man realizes it is too early to give up and finds a piece of white chalk, which he uses to write his name, Paul, on the floor. The plan is excellent, but it has one major flaw. No one from the family goes downstairs. And given that this movie came out in 2025, they probably don't know how to read anyway. Later, Paul feels hungry and looks for food, during which he finds a mousetrap set with a piece of cheese. While some ants are devouring it, he shoves them away with his needle, then drops a nail on the trap to try to activate it. Paul then begins eating the cheese, during which a spider appears above him and begins terrorizing him, so the man has to make noise to drive it away. Later, Paul tries to break through a hole in the cardboard box near the aquarium with the help of a nail, a piece of rag, and a bottle cap with water in it. Although it takes a long time, by soaking the cardboard, he manages to make a breach to get inside. Paul spots a box of matches among the junk and office supplies, but he cannot reach them. He does not have the strength to push aside the book blocking his path, so he barricades the exit and decides to stay there for the night. On July 15th, Paul hears noises upstairs, so he tries to get his wife's attention by banging a nail into paperclip, but all his efforts are in vain. He hears his wife's phone conversation and learns that the house has already been sold and that they will soon be moving out. Realizing that there is no point in waiting, Paul decides to get drunk and approaches the wine cellar in the basement. After poking a hole in a bottle cork with the needle, he scoops up the dripping wine with a thimble and drinks it. However, the alcohol makes him feel sick, and he begins vomiting immediately. Just then, Paul notices the spider watching him, and the creature has now grown much bigger than him. Paul arms himself with a needle and climbs onto the aquarium before calling the spider to battle. Moments later, the spider startles Paul and causes him to fall into the water in the aquarium. However, he remembers how he used to dive into the sea and tries to catch a moment of peace while looking at the goldfish, which delights him. Upon climbing back up, he pours the fish food left in a bucket, but doesn't dare to taste it personally. Later, Paul heads to his hiding place, where he encounters the spider again, which is waiting in the dark like a predator. Paul strikes back with a needle and runs off, then hides behind a bookcase, but the spider continues to pursue him and even pins him against a wall. In a moment of desperation, Paul grabs a wooden splinter to defend himself and drives it into the creature's face, injuring one of its eyes, but it still has so many left. Eventually, the spider withdraws, and to drive it away completely, Paul shouts, causing the animal to rush off. Next, Paul drags the scraps of paper he found in the shelter box. He manages to get a box of matches and with difficulty lights one to start a fire. He warms himself by the small flame alongside a tin soldier, which is his daughter's toy. Paul admits that he misses his daughter and asks the soldier to tell her that he loves her and is still alive. On July 20th, Paul continues to drag out his miserable existence and doesn't intend to surrender to the mercy of fate. When he hears a noise from above, he runs to the stairs to attract the attention of a man descending into the basement. However, the giant's footsteps literally deafen the tiny man, causing him unbearable pain in his ears. When the footsteps fade and the man is left, Paul notices that the fish in the aquarium is gone, which leaves him devastated. On August 2nd, we see that Paul has shrunk even further, so now even the mosquitoes seem like giants. Watching the insect's flight, the man notices a mosquito net on the basement window and realizes that he can escape through it. Gathering all his strength, Paul climbs onto the wooden leg of the shelving unit, positioned at the top. After catching his breath, he accelerates and jumps onto the stone basement wall cladding. The gap between the stones is now so wide to him that it resembles a mountain road. Soon, when it gets dark, he reaches the boiler and discovers a spider's lair nearby. The man tries to carefully move around the web, but accidentally stumbles into it, causing the spider to slowly creep toward him. It is no longer a harmless spider, but a massive monster, and Paul is so frightened that he pees himself and braces for his death. But at the last moment, the spider retreats, either because it fails to notice Paul due to its damaged eye or because it takes pity on him. With this, Paul continues moving forward and reaches the mosquito net, but he is still too big to fit through the mesh, so he has to wait until morning to shrink even further. The next morning, on August 7th, he is woken by a gentle touch of an ant on his leg. The massive spider then approaches him, but fortunately Paul has already shrunk enough to crawl through the net and escape, while the spider is too big to follow. Next, Paul finally escapes into the outside world, where the danger is even greater. He freely walks along the ground, stops at a drop of water, then notices a white butterfly flying toward him. He reflects in an internal monologue and tells himself that he has finally left the cage and is no longer afraid of anything. Wait until he sees mitochondria. After the butterfly flies away, Paul looks at the starry sky above and misses his daughter, while Mia looks at the same stars from another place.